afternoon, fellow citizens. Welcome back to the Citizens Chat Show. My name is Masesa Demiano, taking you through this segment of the festive season. Thank you very much for being ardent followers of this conversation throughout the year. And here we are. We want to take stock of the year, but importantly, the economy and how it has fared through the year. Joining me on this conversation of this segment is Dr. Sarah Bireete. She is our regular panelist on this conversation and the Executive Director with the Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Damien. Good afternoon, viewers, and happy festive season.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Following Sarah is Dr.Ekwaro Obuku. Doctor is a medical practitioner, and formerly he's been the president of Uganda Medical Association that has been in news in a few weeks ago. So
he didn't kneel.
He didn't. We don't know whether he supports the kneeling. Maybe
no,
in his
he
introduction.
didn't kneel.
The kneel gate.
The kneel gate.
The kneel gate.
So probably he will share with us a little of what the thoughts are, since we didn't get the opportunity to have someone to share those thoughts. And yes, Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And I think this is your first time on this conversation.
And I'm very happy to be in this very distinguished panel and studio.
Yeah, thank you very much. The segment of Christmas, when we are eating different foods.
Exactly.
You'll have to guide us on what we should eat
Yes.
in this period.
Yes.
And finally, almost we've missed her, but she was almost a regular panelist. Jane Nalunga, she's the Executive Director with the Seatini. Jane, you're welcome.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
and thank you for having me here.
And good to see you again. You've been a globetrotter lately. See you
Yeah,
here.
I know.
Work.
But right into the conversation, we are trying to take stock of the year. And you've been so much engaged in the issues around the economy and with Civic, with quite a lot of position papers that the organization has presented in this period. But into this year, we opened up the year with reopening the economy. We lost over 2 years into the lockdown of COVID, and there's been, because we're trying to take stock of the whole year, then January came, the whole reopening of the economy was on. But I'd want you to first take us through what were the effects of the lockdown first on the economy as we try to get into the conversation.
Okay, and greetings to our viewers. Thank you so much for that question. Looking back, in fact, when you said looking back now, I said, how did the year go? It hasn't been a very good year for most people. It has been a hard year economically, and you know, economic issues spill over into social issues. And as you have rightly said, we are coming out of the COVID pandemic, which had really battered the economy, not just our economy, but globally. But the fact that we are already a weak economy, we're already ailing, it's like getting a disease. We use the medical example. You get a disease, even if it's malaria, when the body is already weak, you will suffer. But another person can get the same dose of malaria, but because the body is strong, the effect is not felt. So our economy has been for a long time really weak. We have been having challenges with our economy. So when COVID came into that mix, it wasn't very good. Then we see we reopened, the economy is reopened, and then we see that Ukraine war, you know, those challenges, the fuel going up, and you know, when fuel goes up, everything goes up, food goes up, transport goes up. So that has also, it affected the economy, it affected the people, and we saw government trying to help revive the economy, putting money for the private sector to to borrow. But you know, when you are borrowing money, when the economy is not moving, it's also a problem, you know, because when the economy is contracting, even if you get a loan, you know, it's difficult to process that loan. But we also saw government strategies which were really questionable. For example, raising interest rates, you know, and this raised the cost of borrowing. But I'm not an economist. The economists were saying that, you know, they are mopping up the money. We're saying, where is the money to be mopped up? And I think that has also affected businesses so much, you know, that the cost of money. So generally, that the economy hasn't been doing very well from the level of the individuals, because there is a lot of indebtedness, by the way, at the individual level. But there is also a lot of indebtedness at business level. The businesses are suffering. You look at a newspaper, houses are being sold off, even cars being sold off. Then we look at the national level, you know, we are indebted. The country is indebted up to, we are drowning in debt. So the situation is not really good.
Has not been good. Yeah, thank you. I let me try to bring in a doctor. Doctor, from the point of COVID, 2 years in there, from your perspective, because we know that the economy was down, but the pandemic is a medical issue. You've clearly been following. You followed what happened. What could be the effects of the pandemic, probably to the economy, but also generally to the health of the people and all this?
Thank you very much. There are good things which happened this year. And then, of course, there are bad things, and then there are the ugly ones. So the good things is that we managed to control COVID globally due to various strategies. The other good thing is that even the Ebola, which came up, we have finally managed to control it, and that's a good thing. The other good thing is that His Excellency the President fulfilled his 5-year long promise to pay the least paid doctor 5 million. Actually made it at 5.3 million, 5.5 billion starting salary, and the highest paid doctor now is about 15 million, who is the Director General.
Is that gross or net?
This is gross. It used to be, in relative terms, it used to be 1 million shillings, actually about 960. Okay, at the time he made that promise at State House. And the highest paid doctor was a senior consultant at that time, was earning 3.4. That is in 2017.
Gross.
3.47. Gross. Senior consultant. You know, all these proud doctors you see in white coats were earning less than $1,000. So, of course, we've engaged the state several, and he may fulfill that promise. And for me, therefore, I'm not surprised to see the nil, what I'm calling the nil gate. It can create that excitement at times. Now, in terms of the economy and COVID, regarding health, you needed to know that whereas other sectors were suffering, health was booming.
Yes.
You know, this is
People made money.
this is the paradox of the economy. Losses somewhere are gains elsewhere. You also need to understand that the construction sector was booming. Yeah, because
Was
people
it
got
by doctors?
people got no. I'm trying to relate the two and to hammer home the point that one sector of the economy may suffer, like tourism, but another one may boom, like construction, because people had time to now spend the money. But probably also the procurement people also found where to put the money. Okay, and I'm saying this because I know there was a lot of investment in the health sector, which was not realized due to, you know, losses through procurement inefficiencies. Specifically in the health sector, you know, especially the private sector made lots of money. You saw the prices were above normal for ICU. There were gains in certain sectors of the economy. In the health sector, of course, we saw prices going up of ICU beds, particularly because the supply was limited and the demand was very high. So rather than make regulatory interventions, you know, force private sector to reduce price. Government should just increase supply of ICU beds. But you know, pandemics and epidemics are very tricky. You have seen right now in Mulago, they have just commissioned a very big isolation facility for treating Ebola.
After
The Ebola has
after the
disappeared.
infections.
But you know, these things need to be done rapidly.
But the infrastructure should be there.
It's there,
It
but
should.
it needs to be done rapidly. Yeah. And then, you know, these diseases sometimes because of, you know, investment, lots of investment from especially development partners and also government, you know, the existing infrastructure, it has sort of disappeared. So in that sense, that's what I would say the economy has been like. But I can guarantee you, if after that, even the private facilities have experienced hardship. They have experienced hardship.
After making lots of money.
Yes, because you know, with COVID going away, you know, and then of course the decline of things like malaria, okay, and general low performance of the economy. You know, if you follow the PSST and other economists, Dr. Gobi and the economy shows you the economy was underperforming, and people spend less. Actually, you know, health expenses contribute to poverty, what they call catastrophic health expenditure. For you, it may be that you want cancer treatment abroad that makes you poor, but in the village, even just 3 rounds of malaria treatment can make them poor. Now, when it comes to the public sector, whereas government has invested in salaries, there are highlights of lack of what we call it because they say what, okay, and that is a catch-22. Should I give you salary, or should I give you what to use? Is it possible? Which is the better option to give you all? And this saw us losing actually healthcare professionals during COVID-19. You know, because of procurement inefficiencies. Sometimes it's actually money, but you know, to run the operations of this procurement, people, the administrators, and the clinicians were supposed to request. That becomes a problem. We saw this apparently also infection control issues, you know, lack of what to use, PPE and so on, coming about with this Ebola. And we lost, I think, 7 healthcare professionals. And that was part of the ugly part. You know, we
Those
had
are
lost,
top notch.
we had
Top
lost over
consultants.
50. It's difficult to lose the top consultants early on. It's like the Congo War. You lose the foot soldiers who are not known. But you may lose towards the peak of the war, towards the end, the commander. So the commanders, yes, we lost one, the medical doctor from Tanzania, Dr. Mohammed Ali. But the good thing again out of all this
The
is
nurses,
that there was I think 2 or 3 nurses, a laboratory technologist, and the anesthesiologist. Okay? But the beauty of all this is that it created an opportunity for government to start what called the Workers' Compensation Act machinery. For the first time, we have seen the Ministry of Health interested, coming together with the Ministry of General Labour and Social Development to compensate those who died in the line of duty. We have also seen a collaborative with partners coming now to provide PPE. You know, sometimes these things are not there consistently, but the outbreak of a disease begins to. But my final point is to attract investment. My final point is, you know, Uganda is located in the Great Lakes region. It's located actually in an epidemic hotspot. And it's likely that with all these climate change issues, with all this engagement of human settlements, you know, interacting with the environment, the continued pressure, we can only expect more outbreaks. By the way, Uganda has recorded the highest number of outbreaks of filoviruses, Marburg and Ebola, in about a period of 15 years. After Congo, Uganda is number 2 when it comes to Ebola alone. But we also have the other cocktail. You know, in Masaka, as they were screening for Ebola, after that case, they actually discovered Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever and yellow fever.
Wow.
And TB.
TB has been there. Actually, TB is a pandemic of its own, but these other emerging and emerging diseases are also coming out. So it's important that looking forward, government must take a deliberate step to invest in this outbreak response. Why am I saying this? Did any of you see the minister and the ambassador of the US government having different views
Of course, yeah.
in as far as how should we finance it. Okay? The Ministry of Health goes to Parliament to request for 75 billion, and then the ambassador of the US comes and says US government alone has given even 10 billion more, you know, over and above the 75, $20 million. But the minister replies and says, you know, we have not seen it.
Where is the
And
money?
this is a tragedy of aid. This you have seen in the book called Dead Aid by Dabisha Moy. That where does this money actually go? How is it counted? But I must hail the US government for again controlling another pandemic, HIV/AIDS. I can tell you about 20 years ago, I was one of the first people to prescribe ARVs, branded ARVs in Colorado here, to the top government workers. It was called Workers Treatment Centers. Workers Treatment Center by Uganda Business Coalition, Dr. Paul Dixon, my first employer. And I can tell you that program has saved lives. So the US government intervention, some of them are good, some of them are not seen. They are lost. And that program even expanded further when President Obama came in and cut out the middlemen. And that's the challenge with this aid, that there are a lot of inefficiencies with the middlemen. Okay? And the challenge with aid also, it keeps you limping. You never really build your own capacity. But, you know, we have seen that the Central Public Health Laboratory in Uganda developing capacity. Again, lots of aid money from US government. The Uganda Virus Research Institute built capacity. Again, lots of aid from US government to detect. A lot of clinical capacity built by the Infectious Diseases Institute. This is an institute in Mackay University. But again, supported by the US government. So there's still a win-win. It seems we can't avoid it. Yeah, we can't avoid the Americans and the Europeans, but they also have an obligation. Because we saw in West Africa when the epidemic was neglected, it became a pandemic, migrated to United States, and even threatened their lives. COVID, very good example that if we don't support the weaker countries, which are hotspots, I think that's a lesson learned, we will suffer. Yeah, if we in Kampala think we shouldn't go and strengthen the facilities in the rural areas, Mubende, or in Kasese, or in Kwen where anthrax is breaking out, we're going to have a problem. If we think we are going to invest in Mulago, or in the private sector, or in Nakasero, and we forget Mubende, those healthcare workers are going to die, we are going to lose votes. So it's important that governments, again, rethink about what called health security, especially the government of Uganda. And health security has been shown to be a critical area of investment, and we shouldn't leave the critical areas to donors to kickstart, for example, the response.
Yeah, Doctor, you talked about quick response to make like these units, quick response units, and in there we see. Okay, I would want to ask what could be the reason why there could be such delays, but also we saw there's a facility that was, okay, they hired off Mulago and they put all these beds and what happens to some of those facilities? Some of
so
the
this is,
facilities
very important. You know, disinvesting is a difficult decision because you can invest like the Entebbe facility was built, you know, to probably when we are anticipating a third wave of COVID, then COVID disappeared. Probably due to the increased uptake of vaccine among the highest risk groups. Yeah, probably. Okay. Now, in terms of the rapid response propositions or architecture, I can tell you at the Ministry of Health, there are all these wonderful plans, by the way. They are there. People have thought through all of these strategies, just like the UPDF may have its rapid response team for, you know, the rebel attacks. What lacks is the financing to move quickly. To move quickly. And many a time it is the donors or development partners who actually give the initial financing. And you know, there, if you are really a beggar, you have no choice. They dictate. So government could, and it has actually, through I think the Public Finance Management Act 2015, has a mechanism called the contingency fund, I think situated at the office of the Prime Minister, which is a very wonderful mechanism. I think it was activated very well for COVID-19, you know, but for these other diseases, you know, yellow fever outbreak, and then Ebola, it needs to be, because they require maybe much less money than COVID. They require quicker money than COVID, there needs to be availability of this flexible money. Maybe a fund, a rapid response fund, to support rapid response teams, which are already there, by the way, at the district. There are even regional emergency operation centers away from the main one here, the Ministry of Health. I think about 7 of them. One in Arua, one in Arua for West Nile, one in Fort Portal for that area, and then one in Mbale, floods and so on. I think there's one in Masaka Central and so on. There are about 7, which need to be financed. Now, you see, the challenge with the health security is also like, the national security for military engagements, if I should say. You will never know the time when the UPDF saved us from an attack, because they are not going to announce. They are going to announce that, we prevented so many attacks. And it's a continuous investment, recruitment of frontline soldiers, and, make sure they are doing exercises, make sure they are, simulation exercises, make sure you're buying equipment, it's up to date in case we have an attack like we had in town here, the terrorist bombs, we can follow them up where they are. Similar to epidemic intelligence, yeah? Simulation exercises need to be financed. People need to be on high alert. When there's an outbreak in Quen, the teams are supported to go there to manage anthrax. In a One Health, the other thing is a One Health approach. Diseases now are coming from animals to man. Anthrax, and some of these viral hemorrhagic fevers, including Ebola, and also COVID. So that One Health approach, meaning that they need to engage people from Ministry of Agriculture, they need to engage people from health, but also other sectors like security to work together to ensure, for example, when there's an outbreak of anthrax, people don't eat the carcasses which are buried, so that we can, strengthen this response. Now, part of the challenge which we have not answered in terms of health security is, we expect, if we can map the risk and expect that after every rainy season, there's going to be a flood or a mudslide, and after that there's going to be cholera and malaria and so on. Now, if you go to the mountainous regions in the Elgon, all these matrices are there to predict what's going to happen, with meteorological data, and the Office of the Prime Minister is aware. But how do we instill confidence in the people so that they leave those lands? Leaving a land where you are, even if there are cracks, can bring sentiments. What's been happening with evictions and so on. So how do we encourage people? How do we give them trust? And how do we relocate them in a way that instills confidence in government and trust? Because government mistrust can, for instance, diminish the uptake of interventions such as the vaccine.
Doctor, right there, I need to first put a pause on that area, because I will come back to it, including the discipline. Probably our policy and the financiers have on ensuring that some of those interventions are financed, because we've seen COVID and we've seen the questions, the IGG reports where we don't know where the money went, but yet those interventions could have been financed, like you said. But I need to bring on Sarah. We are still discussing the effects of the economy. COVID-19 on the economy. We've had losses of business. People have lost all this, and top entrepreneurs have also lost their lives. So we need to know the future of some of those businesses. Maybe
we need to look at the general outlook of the economy, where you have agriculture contributing 23.6% of GDP, services about 44%, and industries around 38%. So what is Uganda's economy? You have the agriculture contribution, which takes up 68% of the people, and which kept us going throughout COVID in terms of support for food, because many other countries had a food crisis during COVID lockdowns. So we have, and then the president, of course, called it real economy. Then you have the services and industries. And we need to look at other aspects like foreign direct investment, where we are unable to attract proper investors. Majority of offshore investors will prefer treasury bonds and bills, and maybe Jane should tell us more about the kind of quack investors or offshore investors who are the majority in Uganda today, other than the other government dubious investors that we see like Bireete and the rest. So we are able to attract these software investors who can sit anywhere and buy treasury bills in Uganda, buy bonds. And maybe for the benefit of the viewers, they need to know that you can get more money by buying treasury bills and bonds than saving with NSSF. So, and this is not good economics. But that's what we are able to afford as a country. I would also like to look at the health of our economy, which is gauged through reserves. And by 2019, our reserves were standing at $6.5 billion. But as of today, we are at 3.62. And so we have lost half of our hard-earned reserves as a country. And we need to know, so what is the future of Uganda's economy? Also key on debate is the public debt, which is now at 85 trillion. And that is 72% of our GDP, 52% of our GDP. And so we've passed the red flag. Although in terms of the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility, we could still be within range, but we've passed the recommended red flag, which is 50% of GDP, and 18 trillion out of our 21 trillion domestically generated revenue goes into debt servicing. So as a country,
we are left with 2 trillion.
Yes, as a country, we have only 3 trillion. And out of our 47, our budget is 47 trillion?
Let's say
Yes.
45, yeah.
Yes. So when you remove the 18 trillion, we have about 30 trillion for our budget, our domestic expenses. So we have only 3 trillion
10% of what
to meet our 30 trillion expenses, and we are already in 27 trillion debt in terms of our costs.
of the budget.
Yes, so that is the economy that we are talking about. So when people say we are progressing, are we progressing in terms of debt accumulation? Are we progressing in terms of productivity for the people? Are we progressing in terms of foreign direct investment? What area is progressing exactly? So,
At least the construction sector.
no, but out of what? Out of what?
Yeah.
Isn't that stolen money from debt?
Exactly.
Even when, as you were saying, that the construction sector was booming during COVID,
Where
other
was
than
the
the
money coming
doctors,
from?
other than the doctors who were in gainful employment at that moment, the rest is stolen money.
Exactly.
And part of it is this debt.
No, not necessarily. Actually, I was surprised to learn from colleagues. For instance, you would find someone who's working abroad, yeah? And when they were asked to work from home, they came back home. Many of the... let me finish my point. Lots of Africa's economy is contributed by repatriations. Are they called repatriations?
African
Remittances. Remittances. Thanks, my economist here. So that money being sent is quite a bit. And I was seeing a publication, I'm yet to verify its authenticity, that it could actually be more than aid, than the aid we receive. African remittances has overtaken aid. It's a very important contributor in driving Africa's economy. Now, what is the theory of change around this construction?
But ours is about 2 trillion.
I'm not sure about our...
Diaspora, it's around that.
Yeah, but let me just bring it to the theory of change of the construction. So I had colleagues who are working abroad, and they decided to come and work from home, as in home in Uganda, when they were given the option that you no longer need to come from office. And all of a sudden, they had the opportunity to supervise their projects. genuine, honestly, and hard worked for money, which they now constructed their flats and so on.
But what
But
I
percentage
live,
is that?
I live in, no, I'm just trying to give this story,
Yes.
which is not,
Yeah.
even me, I was very surprised because my thinking was that all these floods coming up during the lockdown had a direct relationship
with
to stolen money.
But the
But there are
remittances
people who are earning,
don't account for all that construction.
yeah, but
It could be like 1%.
Yeah,
but
almost, yeah.
honestly, there were people who earned some good money abroad who came and, you know, put up their flats.
Yeah, it could be
It
1%.
It could be. It
But
could be.
how much that contributes to the economy is debatable. The
Because-
final thing about construction and theft, which is bad to hear, but is the reality. You know, I was surprised on the wisdom of the president stopping the IGG from further investigating the lifestyle. I asked myself, why would you be a champion of corruption during the day, at least the president, isn't it? At least during the day, he talks about it. And then hire all these offices, anti-corruption court, anti-corruption act, and then we have the IGG, and then stop the IGG from doing a thorough scrutiny. And he gave his reason. He said, these people will find better ways of sending the money abroad.
You will scare away the money.
Will
So,
scare
but
them.
you have
So
this
I
fine
began
minimum.
to think now. So this money which is stolen, I'm not trying to clean it, but money which is stolen can give employment to people, can buy the cement and so on. It is not going to the hospital or the road. It is going to private pockets. But in that process, someone has to build the house. You're getting me? So which one is the lesser of the devils? I'm not supporting them. But that is what is happening.
I think Dr. Ekwaro,
So this
put
is
it-
the real
put it
world.
best for you. You started by praising the salary increment. And I'm sure that salary increment, which is honest, hard-earned money, has improved the lives of doctors, health workers, and their families.
Yes.
So would you prefer that Ugandans wait for handouts from stolen money in terms of being boys on the site? How are they called? Supply
porters.
porters on the site, instead of earning good money like the salaries of doctors?
Of course, I would prefer that governments put in place. Actually, sometimes when I see these salaries doctors are earning, and I hear reports from consumer organizations, from patients, even my own observation, that a number of doctors are actually not working, I feel guilty. Why? We have the highest bulge of the youth, many of whom are unemployed. And you know, one time when I was making these arguments, the lady from the NRM Entrepreneurs League at that time, Honorable Wanyoto, said, but you know, Buku, at the same time, we must remember our brothers who are not employed. And I felt so guilty that we want more, but they're actually people who have nothing. That's one thing. So when we get more, we have the obligation as doctors to report on duty in time, and actually work. Because our complaint in 2017 was, and this is the ugly part of my year, we were arguing and saying we are paid so little, we can't just stay in a government hospital. We need to do due practice, which the president hasn't banned us from. But my thinking is, if your salary was 3.5 million shillings, and today you're at 15 or 13 for that matter, 4 times, then at least I'm expecting you to increase your workload proportionally in the government facility. Because I can tell you, Damien, the salaries in government now, government hospitals, are now attracting doctors from the private sector. It was the opposite before.
Yeah, which
That's
is
why
good.
Nowadays,
it should
people
be.
are competing,
to get the government.
but my
That's what it should
my
be.
request
Not
to government
sending citizens to be porters,
porters.
on construction
now
sites.
my appeal to government is to rethink how we gain out of all this, because this is our taxes.
Sure.
Okay, how can we make, and when I say doctors, I mean all other health workers, I mean the science teachers who teach our children, but I'm using doctors as an example. How can we have a return on investment so that when a Ugandan goes to health center 4, which has employed a doctor, she does not die from
There's value
bleeding
for money, yeah.
because the doctor is not there or the midwife. So, but government has not taken this stance. I think there is need to repeal the Local Government Act, or there is need to rethink how to re-centralize the hiring of health workers as the cows. You know, the cows, I understand, were re-centralized, so that there is a coordination unit from here. But right now, there's a bit of chaos in terms of attempting to obtain a return on investment. In those salaries.
Damian, I just wanted to go back to the issues which the good doctor has raised, especially during the COVID, around the doctors who earned a lot of money, the ICUs. Because you see, the COVID pandemic brought it out clearly when it came to our health facilities, the health sector. It showed that it was really, really weak. And that,
you mean
yes,
the public?
Yes, the public health sector. And that government had left it in the hands of the private sector, which isn't very good. And remember when they closed the districts, remember that quarantine, don't go into other, some districts didn't have, is it health center, what? People were crying, there are no hospitals, no health centers. They're in some districts.
Those that were there didn't have facilities. Were not well,
you know, yet they were not supposed to go to another neighboring district. And you remember the way our districts have been, you know, subdivided. And I think the issue of health facilities wasn't in, they didn't take into account when they were dividing up the districts. But what I'm saying is that the public sector, the health public sector was really it's still weak. And as the good doctor has pointed out, we are expecting so many pandemics, but I don't see how government is strengthening the health sector. And I'm also not very happy about the aid part of it. You even said we are beggars, which might be true, but which I didn't want.
What you have at the end of your collections, the simple balance sheet is 3 trillion. How can you avoid being beggars?
Let me come to that. Because at the end of the day, for now, we are beggars. But I think we need to look at how do we get out of this trap. Because we are in a debt trap. Because we can't finance our economy, we need to borrow more, we can't invest in the, you know, so we are looking at debt as continuing. We are in a debt trap. And I think that's where, as a country, we need to put our energy. How do we get out of it? The issue of food availability. I wanted to comment on the issue of food availability. We had food. Why did we have food? Because the small-scale producers, the 70% of the people in small-scale producers continued producing. And how? How did they continue producing food for us to eat? I want to give an example. We have an office in Zimbabwe, in Harare. Harare, when they had challenges in their economy, they had challenges of food because they didn't have resources to procure seeds from South Africa. Because they no longer have these seeds which we plant. They don't. They have to import, buy seeds, and
because of GMOs? Or?
Yes, GMOs. They have to. And a seed goes with a pesticides, goes with a fertilizer. They were not able to do that.
Sovereignty.
So now, those are some of the issues which we really need to look at, you know, that those small-scale producers are producing because they can be able to replant, to be able to share their seeds, to be able to replant. Today, we are looking at the GMO in Kenya, and some members
they have refused it. High Court has blocked GMOs in Kenya.
In Kenya, the parliament. But here, the policy was shelved, but there are people whom you talk to, members of parliament, are saying, we need GMOs, we need to increase our production, there is climate change, we need resilient seeds. So what I'm saying really, this is just one example, is that we need to plan this economy very well. And if we don't, we are going to remain in the debt trap. But for me, I believe if we can be able to plan, we can be able to trade, increase production and productivity, and be able to fund even our health sector, so that we don't remain beggars.
I have a question for Madam Jane.
Yes.
With your permission, moderator. Jane, we have a National Planning Authority, and we have been having national plans. We are on the third cycle, NDP 1, NDP 2, NDP 3. We are in the midterm review of the NDP 3, also building a framework for NDP 4. Are you saying that we are not planning as a country?
When you look at those NDPs, you look at our budget. The theme is agro-industrialization, increasing value addition, and the household incomes and all that. And that's a good plan, good theme. But how much money are we putting into agriculture? How do we walk that talk? Today, before they combined into the agro-industrialization, the programming, the budget programming now, because the other time we had means of trade, agriculture on its own. Now they brought them together, agro-industrialization. The current budget for agro-industrialization is 1.4 trillion. 1.4 trillion only. And you are combining agriculture, you are combining trade, you are combining industry, cooperative, all of them together, and 1.4 trillion, So the plan is there, The theme is clear, industrialization for poverty, but how much money are you putting there? And unless we look at the priorities, today, Ministry of Trade is not a priority, by the way. It isn't. I have been in trade and I have seen Ministry of Trade going to negotiations, negotiating for markets, trade negotiations, but it's the other party you are negotiating who is paying for all your negotiators.
Interesting. Transport, per diem,
everything. You see, there is a link now between production, industry, and marketing. We get the markets, and so many of them. We have now the Continental Free Trade Area, and everybody now is talking about the CFTA, how many billions of people, the market is there. We have a AGOA market, the president has gone. I don't know whether it will be
reignited.
AGOA is supposed to end in 2025. They are saying it has to be extended. AGOA is there. Europe told us, bring everything but arms. And the markets are there. But what are we doing? So if we are to get out of poverty and end the debt trap, we need to generate our own resources. We need to produce. We need to add value. We need to trade, but we are not doing that.
I need to ask Jane, towards the recovery of the economy, as you're trying to reopen the economy, of course, we've seen government came out and said, okay, the resources that they put into these banks, UDB and all this, it was meant to help revamping the economy, to help the low businesses to get some economy, to kickstart their businesses. But how much do you score that move? Do we see the benefit of it? Do we see entrepreneurs benefiting from that vote that was put into some of these banks?
Yeah, but look at UDB. UDB, they put money in UDB, and I think the minimum amount was, is it 100 or 10 million? 100 million for UDB to get resources from UDB. How many MSMEs can go to UDB? They put some other monies, like my sister has said, you'd rather lend to government than lending to the private sector. Because now government is borrowing on the domestic market. And if I'm a banker, it's risk-free. I sit back and relax.
Wait for
because
your command.
it will come in, isn't it? So we don't have such a financial sector which looks after the small MSMEs. But then again, all this money which you have talked about in UDB, in Emioga, Sujui, where it's borrowed money. But if we had a booming financial sector, banking sector, a bank is supposed to mobilize resources, isn't it? People bank, others come and do what?
And borrow.
And borrow.
Yes.
Yes, that's what a banking sector should be. But when we privatized our banking sector, we bring in all these high level. They don't even have branches anywhere outside Kampala, They don't have branches in these small districts. They don't. So how do you mobilize resources for onward lending? So you see, even the banking sector is not supporting our economic recovery. We have all these big banks which are underwriting the constructions, those big, they mobilize, they lend to our government and they take away all the resources. So you find the government doesn't even have resources to own land. They borrow money, So that's the debt trap we are in. Yet if some of you never heard of UCB, Damian, you didn't see UCB.
It's in the books.
Yes.
We read in the books.
My daughter was telling me that, some people, you gauge their age when they talk about certain things which you have never heard of. UCB, that let us meet at UCB. But when you look at UCB,
maybe because of the age, of our viewers, why don't you tell us what UCB is?
UCB is the Uganda Commercial Bank. And it's almost the same as KCB, Kenya Commercial Bank. UCB was a government bank,
Citizens Bank.
In fact, it was a citizens bank, And it had branches all over.
Every district.
And people were saving. And, even an economy to grow, people should know how to save. People were saving, people were getting loans. We don't have that anymore.
I want to contribute something on the debt, the cycle, the debt cycle, vicious debt cycle. I started by mentioning that for our consumption expenditures, we start off every financial year with only 3 trillion. And that is to assume that the revenue collections would go as planned, because there could be a shortfall. And even start off without that money. So when we borrow money, we are borrowing to pay salaries. We have 526 MPs. No, 546 MPs. We have 81 ministers. We have 123 presidential advisors. We have 180 local government agencies. All of these have chairmen, RDCs, DISO, ISO, Sijui what, KAO, VISO. So we are borrowing for consumption.
Yeah.
We are not borrowing for production.
Exactly.
So,
and in the next 3 years, today we are talking of 18 trillion debt servicing. By 2036, our debt portfolio will be 61 trillion. And in the next 3 to 5 years...
At this rate, you mean? It is projected at this rate. At the current rate.
Projected will be 61 trillion debt. So, but in the next 3 to 5 years, a lot of this debt we are servicing is going to they are going to mature. And when they mature, you must pay. So that's why I said that we risk In 3 years, we have depleted half of our reserves.
Mm.
But in the next 5 years,
We'll
we
risk-
risk depleting
The
the
entire-
balance of 3.62 billion dollars in our reserves.
Billion, not trillion.
Billion. In when these debts mature.
It's very little.
So what is our plan for debt maturity? And we are increasing the interest on debt
Yeah.
through everyday borrowing. Every week Parliament passes loans. So we are trapped. The trap is beyond. Already we are at 85 trillion of borrowed money and what goes into debt servicing. You
Twice
know,
our budget.
And you see, we're also borrowing in foreign currency. These euro
yes.
bonds, and the dollar is going up. The dollar goes up. Our
So the trap is
debt,
deep.
it's deep.
And if as a government, we don't plan on productive activities, on making the citizens productive, which will then increase the tax base,
Exactly.
we shall not get out.
Yeah, we
The
want.
question I have listening to the doomsday talk from all of us, because the statistics, if we had follow numbers, it is doomsday, by the way.
Yeah, but statistics don't
Yeah,
lie.
the statistics don't lie. And,
Yeah.
the question I keep asking myself, what is the experience of the United States of America in terms of debt? And I'm happy to hear that. But also, what is the experience of Sri Lanka? You know, it shut down. How did they shut down? What did it mean? But more importantly, so what to us? How can we get out? Like, as soon as we get out of this room, if you are the Minister of Finance, what would you do? For example, in the health sector, does it mean for me now, these salaries we are celebrating are not
Come with the
sustainable?
debt- Come with the debt
Yeah,
budget.
no, are not sustainable. You know, we are anticipating that we will take doctors to the health center 3 level, take them closer to the people. Does it mean the shelves of the pharmacies in hospitals are going to be empty?
Okay, if
You
I
know?
may.
And then finally, which I
to
would like
come
to
in
you
first as I
economists to
conclude.
come, this oil we are talking about, these extractives, the gold we are talking about, the reserves, what does it mean in rehabilitating or resurrecting the situation? Yes, I would be
Maybe
happy
I will
to.
start with that. I had during the economic summit on NTV, we had the chairman of Total Energies, and I whispered, and I'm like, when are we getting the first dropout? He said, nobody knows. So, and most of this debt trap has come out of that anticipation
Exactly.
for oil. Since 2005, we have been borrowing
Against-
against oil.
Against what do we call
Anticipation
it?
for oil or reserves. So borrowing in anticipation is part of what has driven us into unnecessary extravagance. As we discuss the increasing debt burden, most of cabinet ministers are procuring new vehicles, new Land Cruisers, as you tell citizens to be frugal. It started with the president procuring the most luxurious Mercedes Benzes, then Speaker and Deputy Speaker. Now, cabinet ministers in this budget where we are unable to pay salaries on time. Because I've just seen a headline in Monitor saying councillors in Masaka have laid down their tools. They've not been paid for 4 months. And this is common in most of the local. We are unable to pay salaries on time as a country. We are broke. By the time of salary, the time of pay salaries come, there is no money. Because if there was money, it's just a matter of sending an instruction to banks to pay. The National Planning Authority told the Committee on the Economy just 1 month, last month, that government so far has spent 51% of the budget in 4 months. What does that mean? A chain of supplementary budgets coming. And we are on zero revenue. Our revenue is 3 trillion, assuming that you collect all the money you project.
Yes, so how do we?
It's more doomsday.
Yeah, so how do we
It's more doomsday.
get out of it?
How do we get
And
out?
what does oil
Yes, that's
mean?
the
What
point.
does all these minerals in Karamoja, all this I'm hearing in the bush here, there is gold. What do all these things mean? Muvende gold, actually.
Yeah, maybe I may first have a shot on what do we need to do. One is that the partial development model on paper, which has now been codenamed per diem. The PDM. The PDM, the way it is on paper, if it was implemented in a better way, it would put more the 38% Ugandans out of the money economy. It would put them in the money economy, but also make them productive and increase the tax
38% or
base.
68%?
38
Okay.
outside the money economy. So make them productive and put them in the, have an active cash cycle. And that's why the Nabanja money was good for giving purchasing power to the vulnerable people. Because as you go to buy soap, as you go to buy sugar,
what do you mean by
government is
Nabanja
taking
money?
the consumptive tax. Yes, the cash transfers she did during COVID.
Okay.
It is good for those vulnerable people if it is implemented with the right data and goes to the right beneficiaries to give them some purchasing power to go to their shops and transact. What you need is every citizen to have ability to transact.
Yeah, but it has to be sustainable.
Yes,
sustained.
of course there should be a plan for sustainability, but also right data. Of course it was hit by a scandal of going to fake people. But if it goes to, like, for example, you have a grandmother in a home who can't afford a matchbox, and that grandmother is able to buy a matchbox, that is something. And that 100,000 means such an income, such a homestead. So if we can have every homestead in regular cash cycle transacting, then you revamp the economy. If you can have productivity by investing, we have fast-moving sectors, and they are known. The oil seeds, because we are crying with the cooking oil from Ukraine. Yet we have all the fertile soils here. We are crying over wheat from Ukraine. Yet we can grow wheat in Kabar and Pakwach in the islands.
Here, Karamoja as well.
Yes.
Those are that's the planning I was telling you about.
Yes.
NDP is there,
Kapchorwa, not
but
Karamoja.
are we planning for that?
If you look at tourism, if we can properly invest in tourism, tourism can revamp the economy more than the oil you are waiting for. If we can invest properly in manufacturing,
Faster than.
faster and in a more sustainable manner.
But not that we need proper planning.
Yes,
which
where
is
I get
not
you
there.
is that as much as we have the likes of NDP 1, 2, 3, we need to move away from sloganeering.
Exactly.
But also do things that are practical and will make the citizen reproductive.
That's true.
Interesting.
I wanted to go to the issues, the questions which Doctor has raised.
Can we come back right into the after the break?
Okay.
So that we just have a little break, water break, then we return into the comment because it's getting heated and interesting. So we might go on and on. Yet we need to stretch a little. So right there, our dear viewers, thank you very much for following. Let's have a short break, but the conversation is on our socials, Twitter, Facebook, we chat show you on Twitter, we're on YouTube, Civic Space TV. Be part of the conversation. It's a festive season. You're home, you're relaxing. You could get your phone and do a tweet, one or two, and we be part of this interesting conversation around the economy. Let's get back after this short break.
The Citizens Chatroom happens every Friday at 2 p.m. on Civic Space TV Online on Facebook and YouTube. We invite you to be part of this conversation. Civic Space TV, freedom always.
Welcome back from that short health break that we had to take. Thank you very much for being ardent followers of this conversation. Please, on socials, Civic Space TV, hashtag #ChatShowUG. We are having this conversation on Twitter, on Facebook, we're live, and on YouTube, Civic Space TV. Subscribe. You hit that button of subscribe and be part of these conversations happening on this channel. Quite a lot of programs are happening through this festive season for you to partake. And in here, today we're discussing and of course analyzing the economy, how we've performed across the year. And on the panel, we've been joined by Sarah, been joined by Ekwaro, Obuku, and Jane Nalunga. And from the conversation and where we stopped, there was a lot of information that was coming through. And of course, Dr. Ekwaro has just admitted that there's a lot of learning he's having on this conversation. And Jane, there's somewhere you had stopped, and you needed to respond to some of the comments. And
Yeah.
that
I don't know
brought up.
whether I'm not going to depress you
Further.
But
more.
it's better to shock you.
I'm getting what
We
we call
need the shock
electrical
therapy as Ugandans.
ECT.
The shock
You know,
therapists think
some
right.
mental illnesses those days. They
You
would put
read a
electricity
book
on
by
your head.
Clay.
So you get better.
By claiming the shock doctrine. And that's the shock doctrine. It's about IMF World Bank policies and what they are doing to us. The shock doctrine. Very, very interesting. I wanted to go back to the issues which Dr. raised about our debt situation, looking at the US and Sri Lanka. Those are two different, very
And
good
Japan.
examples. And Japan. Now, US, our debt is denominated in dollars. So if our debt were the one people are borrowing in Uganda shillings, I don't think we would have a problem. And that's why we shouldn't compare ourselves with the US, that their
In
debt
terms
is
of the
also
ratio
the
and-
ratio and all that. It's in its own category. When it comes to Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka lost a port to China, to Chinese.
Again, due to debt.
Due to debt, and it goes back to the issue of resource-based loans. Because today, we have just been getting loans, but most countries are now, most people who are giving out loans, they want collateral because we are becoming more and more risky, and one of them are the resources. What resources do you have to back up, because the more risky you are, it's like normally if you are going to lend and everybody knows here, we know, Damian, you borrowed from Sarah, you borrowed from Doctor, you haven't paid. If you come to me, that Jane, please help me. I'm really bad off. The terms will be hard. I will say, transfer the card.
Transfer it and the house.
And the house, so that I give you that. And that's where we are now. And that's why.
Let me just ask, have we transferred anything?
We are not sure because you see.
We are not sure, but the airport.
Seems to be on the balance.
The airport collections are being banked on
an escrow account.
In Exim Bank, directly going to China. When you travel, your airport tax is directly going to China.
So we are not in a
So the airport.
That's one
In
example.
brief, the airport is gone.
No, collections are going direct.
But that means it's gone. If we are not getting the money out of it, then it is an airport
we are
in
going
China.
to see more resources.
It's in China.
We are going to
When
see
you land in
more.
Entebbe, you have landed in Beijing.
We are going to see more and more resource-based loans, because even when you look at our debt structure, we have been getting more loans, concessional loans from IMF, World Bank, the Paris
What is a
Club.
concessional?
Concessional, the rate.
They have a lower
The
interest rate, a long term of maturity,
period,
and fair terms of payment.
And some of them, there is a grant,
part of it is free
percentage
money
of
which you
grant.
don't pay back.
But now increasingly, you see, like this loan which we got from Standard Chartered, Sujui Sru, where, it's purely a commercial loan. But when you look at
10% insurance
higher,
when an individual borrows at 2% insurance money, government is borrowing at 10%
insurance
Instead of
upfront.
0.1%.
So it's like transfer your house to me first.
Exactly,
thing.
upfront. So we are looking at.
Jane, in that on the non-concessional loans, at some point I would want you to also give us how can we avoid them.
But you see, it's now very difficult to avoid them because the more you become a risky borrower, the more you have to go to more risk. You see, so that's the biggest challenge, and we see more and more private sector loans coming in. Take an example now of climate. people who went, I don't know, people who went to
Climate adaptation.
adaptation and mitigation, those people who were in
Egypt.
Egypt. We are now talking about climate financing. The polluters, those developed countries who have been polluting, they have a role
They
and
have
an
agreed.
obligation to provide resources for adaptation and mitigation. And they have been promising.
Rwanda has
give,
received, I
you know,
think 2 days ago.
Hey.
How
Rwanda
much?
has received, I didn't check the amount.
But you see, when you look at the amount of money which we are supposed to get to address adaptation and mitigation, it's a lot, and these people are promising very little. So now what they are doing, people who are in Egypt, they were telling us there were more banks and private sector there than civil society and government. They are looking for businesses, climate financing. So that means we are going to contract more and more loans, but from the private sector. So you look at that, the situation is not very good. And you remember we had a debt campaign and debt forgiveness,
cancellation.
debt cancellation under the HIPC initiative. But now it's going to be very difficult because we are not borrowing from these concessional loans, the Paris Club. You can't tell Standard Chartered
To forgive.
that forgive me. Can you?
Or China.
Oh, China, what do you think? I forgive you. You know, this isn't a church that we forgive sins. So we need also to look at that trend that things are really tough. And now in the debt architecture, what's coming up, that if Uganda you can't pay and somebody is running after your debt and they don't have that time, they sell it. So there are people waiting to buy our loans. But that means the loan is also, the interest payment is going up, because I'm buying your loan, I'm giving you a longer time, longer time period to repay me now. I have bought it from SAD, So that means you're going to pay me more, or maybe
spend more money servicing
that loan. So there are so many issues going up, and maybe to look at how do we exit. You talked about the minerals. The Africa Union way back came up with the Africa Mining Vision, very big consortium, to see how we can be able to add value to our minerals. And now today it's really important because we are looking at under the climate change issues, we are looking at clean energy transition. Even the Europeans, the developed countries, are talking about clean energy transition, except that with Russia cutting off their oil and gas, they are now going back to the dirty energy which they don't want us to use. But the most important thing is if we can be able to add value to our minerals, the cobalt, the lithium, that's also another way of developing our economy, because developed countries are looking at clean energy. And the clean energy, most of the minerals to transit to the clean energy are here in Africa. But now what's going to happen, we are going to export more raw cobalt, getting these investors to come in here. They don't pay taxes. They are doing us a favor, and they take the minerals. So it's that planning and rethink which we need.
Maybe if I may add on one thing, and I agree with the Jane submissions, but on Dr. Ekwaro's comment, I think we need also to look at ways of stopping fetching water in a basket. Because even the debt we are accumulating, the IGG has said we lose 10 billion. 10 trillion.
She said there was a report of 20 trillion.
Yes.
Now
it
the other
has
report
gone
is
to
9.8 trillion.
That is 34% of the budget.
Exactly.
So we should cross. Why do we fetch water in a basket? And you expect to cook with it? By the time you leave the well, before you enter your kitchen,
the water is gone.
Yeah, but for me, as we discuss here, I just wanted to share something which struck me. When I was running for work as MP, I visited. Of course, I had grabbed the issues of healthcare workers.
Mm.
But of course, workers MP represents interests of all workers, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I was interested in factory workers,
Mm-hmm.
and I was also interested in the armed forces, because nobody talks about the armed forces. If they talk about them, then it's in closed sessions and so on. Yesterday at Serena, a soldier approached me actually, introduced himself. I asked him, where is your name? He told me where his name was, where is your warrant card? I said, where's your warrant card? He said, you know, I'm from Congo.
Mm.
I had to escape because my salary is not paid.
He deserted. He's a
people-
deserter.
My people are suffering, and so on.
Mm.
He was in the combat?
He was in a combat.
Okay.
Mm.
He was in a combat, and full combat.
Mm.
I said, okay, give me your number, I'll take it and I verify. Maybe he
Mm.
was a con man.
Mm.
But it reminded me of my experience in 2020 when I visited one of the barracks in town. I think it was Ginger Road. I was supposed to meet one of my agents there because he was staying with a brother. He said, I'm going to stay with my brother at Ginger Road Police Barracks. And as I went there, I said, no, you don't come, we'll be in a uniport. I said, I mean, in the 80s, my father would take me to my village in Loro, and we just had a hut. He was a doctor, but that was the economy then. He had a bicycle and a hut.
Mm.
Come to Kenya, from your 3-bedroom house, you come here, you're in a hut. So I had lived in a hut. So when I went to they said, okay, can I go for a short call?
In the import.
The uniport.
Were there separations of bedrooms?
Yeah, that one, they leave alone that one. First of all, it's a uniport.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. I said, doctor, you don't go there.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. So I went to find a common toilet and bathroom, and you know, in my heart, I said, you know, I think the first week of Parliament, if I go, I should create a scene, you know, like Dr. Yomoki, the way he goes there with a mosquito net and sleeps there. I said, if we go with Yomoki, we first sleep there for 2 weeks until someone sits down and constructs low-cost housing for policemen. You know, me, whenever I get out of a meeting, and you will find a police lady. Recently, I came out of a meeting right out there. I found 2 police ladies sitting in the tent, the umbrella of the cobbler. I wanted to polish my shoes. And then I asked them, why are you here? They said,
For sure.
doctor. Somehow they had seen me. They said, hunger. I felt so bad. I said, okay, this money which I've received from the meeting, let me just give them. They were so moved because I know how, you know, we say these policemen are corrupt, yeah? But they are actually suffering. They are standing in the sun there, they are standing in the rain, and these
they
are
are
the
hungry.
armed forces,
And they are hungry.
okay? They are armed forces. If they decide to strike, it will not be like us, we go on TV and do all these things. You know, we can go back to where we came from pre-86. Let me put it that way. So I think the police council, if it exists, the UPDF High Command, if it's the one which is in charge, the MPs of the UPDF, the leaders of the UPDF, they need to take care of the security forces where they stay. Going to the army should be, and serving in the prisons service, in the police force, should be a source of pride. You know, if I'm, in fact, teaching health work, you know, this public service of Gwewayo, you know, you can die, like we saw people die in Mubende, yeah, recently, and COVID. The policemen can die. You saw the so-called rebels. I think they shot the policemen. They come to police stations and shoot. The soldiers are dying on our behalf. And honestly, the guys on the ground, nobody is speaking for them. And in this economy where you have talked of wastage,
No, our priorities are upside down.
you get.
Look at the State House
our
budget.
leaders are buying cars.
1.8
big
billion
cars.
per
But
day.
I wanted to,
Yeah.
because when we had the issue, the Ukraine issue, the only time I saw the president concerned on our reserves is when there was a question of government coming through to subsidize. And he was clear to that. He said, no, we cannot put money in subsidies. We cannot subsidize the economy because we'll be depleting our reserves. I would want to ask a question, was that really a right move at that point, or did we see any positives from that?
In terms of subsidy, I would bring in the issue of equity. Very many people have benefited from our taxes, and they are super rich in Uganda. And the distribution of our prosperity is not equitable. It may not be equal, but at least it should be equitable. Where are those safety nets for the very poor? The Right Honorable Prime Minister's program, Nabanja's program, as you said, cash transfers, they are effective, especially when they are conditional. How can we ensure that the policemen, I mean, honestly, nowadays you go to the airport, you go anywhere you are parking, when there's a policeman, even when he's checking you, you know, at the airport he's saying, boss, don't you have Red Bull there? You know what I mean? And if you have a hat, you find whatever money is there, but you give him.
And I remember last week the women police, the wives of the police,
who are showing where they are staying.
They are staying.
You know what I mean?
So bad.
I think if you're a public servant, I think we need to give them priorities. I think we need to disinvest in the leadership. Where I get into an office, the first thing I want to do is to buy a vehicle, then I buy another vehicle for my farm, you know, and then buy another vehicle, then another vehicle. Yes, then build another house, because this is how we have been brought up. If you go down to the average village, I think now, and you ask a boy, what do you want to become? They will not say, I want to be a doctor. Neither will they say, I want to be an engineer. They will say, I want to be an MP. And I can tell you, whenever I'm on the street, yeah, someone tells you, I think Museveni should make you a minister. You see, this is the thinking. you get what I mean? You can't even say,
and it's not just
the thinking now is
yes.
The person doing well is a minister. But I tell them, but do you know, in our state, we're able to change a lot in the health sector without going to an office. Because we came together, we said, Mr. President, without blood and oxygen, whether you like it or not, there's no patient you can send to a pharmacy to buy oxygen. And we were absolved by COVID. There was oxygen hunger, even among the rich. You get what I mean? Your bank account didn't matter. And this is what the managing director of Stanbic said. COVID taught us that, you know, and she's called Anne Juko. She said, COVID taught us that your bank balance didn't matter. So there are things, fundamentals we must take care of, like oxygen, which again, cuts across other diseases, pneumonia, you know, complicated malaria. The other one is blood. We fought for that as doctors, and blood transfusion services, they increased the budget by over 100%. So if there's a problem with blood in this country, then the problem is about efficiencies, procurement, and so on, because that money is there. Okay? And those are two things we contributed around without necessarily going into cabinet. But the thinking now is to move anything, you need to be a parliamentarian, you need to be a mayor, you need to be, we are no longer engineers, so and so it doesn't attract.
but who are society's role models today? Who are society's role models? Can you give me two? Who are society's role models?
Yourself, you know.
No.
The PhD.
There was a Sarah Quarrels. She would have been our minister, but she's there quarreling.
They think we are angry. When we sit here and discuss this, they think we are angry people. The people they are looking up to are either MPs or
speaker.
You know, how do you call them? Like this one, who are the policemen?
Shida also.
No,
Yes.
The balance.
The influencers.
The influencers,
Yes.
yeah.
The influencers.
Those are the socialists are the role models.
But you see,
black.
but
Those
you
are
see,
society's role models.
but you see, Sarah, what you are raising about our role model and who we are and our priorities, I think it's key to what you are saying. Because I remember I did my master's in the UK, but you could sit in the underground. You reach Parliament, the UK Parliament. You see ministers getting out, and you say, but I saw that man in the newspapers
MPs
with his
driving
umbrella,
bicycles.
you know, getting out of the underground train. All of them members of parliament.
So the question
you know?
would be, for me this year, looking back, you know, and today, you know, just this week, the number of policemen I have met, and I have to just, you know, even the money for fuel, you're like, no.
Let me give.
The guy is in the sun, you know, and my memory of what I saw at Naguru or Ginger Road Barracks. Actually, whenever, even if I've gone to the market, if between the last shopping and the next stop, there's money there, I may not buy the bread because I just feel to cure my heart a bit. Let me give that. So how can we, though, do something more deliberate? And this is what, by the way, we used to do in Mulago as interns. Yes, there could be doctors who pick from patients, but when we were interns, when we were younger, you know, professional medical students, a mother comes with nothing to Ward 5.
And they collect some.
She's 16 and she's going to give birth
Teenage
on the
mothers.
floor. You get? Doctors, you have to collect,
yeah.
buy the cavera, buy everything, buy the first sheet and say, but who are your people? Can we call them? You get? Now, how can the state provide that safety net if at the same time you've got to fuel
Maybe
all
share.
these 500 vehicles, and for one thing that must expire in time is the vehicle of an official. They write it off as soon as possible
Serious.
for
too
purposes
serious.
of buying another one, but they take
But
them
they
home.
sell it to themselves.
Exactly.
So
At peanuts.
how
like-
can we
It's
correct
a
that?
system.
No. You see, we
Very
saw what
interesting, Very good
Rwanda.
question. That
We
you
saw what
said,
Rwanda did with the fuel guzzlers. They decided to say that every person who is in public service must drive a saloon car. They got rid of four-wheel drive cars. If you want a four-wheel drive car,
Buy it for
buy
yourself.
it yourself with your personal money and maintain it. So drive saloon cars, and the fuel you get is for a saloon car. Rwanda did it and got rid of all the four-wheel drivers in public
To
service.
date,
Yes, they don't have them. If you want a four-wheel drive, you buy it yourself. Public vehicles are saloon cars. But away from that, we need to change, like the mentality of looking at politics as a business or entrepreneurship. We should make politics not attractive in terms of money. We need to cut that 40 million salary back to 10 million. Then the entrepreneurs will get out of politics and we'll have good people who can think for the country.
And we can learn from Sweden and Norway.
Yes.
When you look at the members of parliament of Sweden and know what they get,
It's
you can't
basic.
believe it.
People go in politics as a service. They don't go there to earn money.
And
so
for
we
me-
need to remove those money from politics
and this has to, in my
and
view,
give it to police officers.
yes,
And to the civil service, the teachers,
I think,
the
I think,
How
doctors.
possible
agree.
when it's the money that has to keep someone longer in power? How do we now link that?
Retire them.
Because that's where
I
the
think
problem starts.
it's easier said than done, but it's what is desirable.
It's what we
You
must
know,
do.
when I was running for office, doctors raised me, and thank you very much, and other health workers and well-wishers, about 60 million shillings. And what I did, apart from paying my very few staff, I think I had 3, including my daughter, who I think I paid last week but one, after 2 years. Yes? For supporting me, balancing the books, Excel, and so on. You know, changing the car tire so that I could go to the rural area to get the votes to be sent to the center. I organized health worker sensitization workshops, and I got experts, lawyers in workers' rights and labor union people to come and talk to the workers and sensitize the leaders who are the voters, because it's electoral college. And I deliberately refused to bribe anyone. And I entered the race
You can't get
as the
through.
most popular, because I rarely introduced myself. You meet the voter, who is the, what do you call it, delegate, and says, "Are you? I've seen you. Are you not doctor?" He may pronounce your name a bit differently, but at least he knows you are the
face.
Yes, but the result came out, and I was number 9. And we needed to be top 5 so that you can sail through. So even out of when they had multiple choices, And this taught me that the politics of the day is not driven by ideas. At least I had it first-hand experience. And probably this is what changed the NRM. I believe they came with good intentions and good ideas, but you know, as things moved along, it became transactional. And for as long as we have transactional politics, it is going to be very difficult for citizens to demand accountability.
So they brought
And
in
checks and
They brought
balances.
in the transactional politics.
It is not who brought it in is difficult to tell, but we embraced it as Ugandans. We embrace transactional.
So how
politics.
do we and embrace it? And you know,
Maybe we
and
need to
No,
look
the
at
economy will force us. The economy will collapse further. It will force us to rethink some of these mistakes we've made.
So the people, according to history, I was a bit taken aback to learn this week that political education was actually scrapped from
Yeah,
and
from
I
the
need to be
curriculum.
corrected if it was.
It is true, up to university level.
So it was scrapped. And my thinking is that the people must take charge of governance. Okay? Must take charge of governance and demand for accountability of services. I'm a strong proponent of a national health insurance scheme where we contribute. Why? Today, I'm a director of a hospital. I'm an in charge of a hospital, government hospital. But my allegiance is not to the people. It is to the person giving me the budget. Do you know the people in, for instance, Lira Regional Referral Hospital, or Mubende for that matter, cannot demand accountability from the hospital director. Why? Because the director reports to Parliament, isn't it? So you could argue that the Parliament represents the people, but there is no direct contact to demand for better services.
But you see,
But once we have a contributory scheme, even if it's 500, even if it's 1,000, even if the people are told that for you are too poor to contribute, government will contribute for you, and they participate in that process for demand. The reason you can go to a government hospital and not find oxygen and nobody cares is because there is no linked accountability system. If you went to Case Hospital and you're paying insurance, okay, and there is no oxygen, even the owner can be called and he will move up and down until oxygen is availed, not because the minister has come, or not because the prime minister is going to visit tomorrow, but because there is that agency of demand and supply and accountability. That is missing in health service delivery. I was hoping these salaries, which are, I'll call them impossible salaries, in the sense that we never expected to reach this level so soon, come with accountability demands. I was expecting that the 2019 National Health Insurance Scheme bill, the president would assent to it being an act, but in a way that empowers the citizen, not in a way that creates an NSSF and someone can pick it. You know, you can create an NSSF, then someone picks it and we end up in a worse situation.
you see, Doctor,
Thank you.
when you talk about accountability, empowering the people demanding from below, we can extrapolate it from the health sector to the entire economy, isn't it? That people are empowered, people are demanding. It could be a good way of changing the system, but for me, I don't think it's enough. For me, I think it's the top leadership to change. Sarah, whatever you are saying, issues of priorities, you know, issues of saying don't drive these cars, drive that car. It can't come
It's a
from
leadership
people.
question.
It's a leadership issue. It has to be the top to say from today, I'm starting from me. From today, this is going to happen. But people from demanding
What
from
is that
below.
No,
called?
the leadership today cannot do that.
Yeah,
Because
that's
if you
what I'm
look at misuse, even of Uganda Airlines are fraud with one passenger, a member of the first family to Ethiopia. Uganda Airlines is in Rwanda, one member of the first family. Are they paying? Are they chartering?
No.
So this leadership, just forget it. We need to remove it.
So what is that called? Where what is that situation where people come about and change that? So the legal channels provided for is called the general election. Okay, this is what is recognized in a democracy. The so-called illegal but legitimate is a revolution. You get, the people take charge. I see the Red Revolution happened in Buganda, where not even now the people, but the wretched of the earth in Uganda felt empowered. The youth, who are the bulk of the population, because I was an observer really. You know, you are just one vote, one leader. And there is this movement which is overtaking even those who started it. The red wave. You know, you had stories where just putting your name, looking back, maybe some of us should have just got a corner somewhere in Nakawa or where there are these, you know, actually quarters.
You get
Where
on the
I'm from the north, you also get on the wave. You find you also, and maybe you help the Joels and what in there and try to help. Yes, because sometimes getting into the housework. So that kind of thing, if managed very well, can actually be an opportunity, even for the NRM. Anybody who wants to change government should welcome that change. Because sometimes you may be a leader there, you want to change things, but the mechanics are not helping you. But again, of course, after 40 years, I think there's a saying that the more things seem to change, the more things remain the same. So I think
I want to ask Jen one question. I see you want to conclude.
Yes.
Jen, you analyze the budget more than us, the people who work general on governance. In the budget, we have 7.1 trillion going into security, and that is 15% of the budget. Then we have 3.4 trillion also going into classified expenditure.
so 10 trillion.
What is, yes. So when you make a total, security tax. So what is it for? Isn't it a double budgeting? What is classified?
It's security.
So security tax.
The other one.
So security takes about 20% of our budget.
Yeah. The other,
and then the policemen are in a plight he's describing.
Exactly.
So what is the problem?
There's a contradiction.
It is leadership.
It's the leadership.
Really, we need to.
Interesting. And I would just, while you attempt to respond to that, and Jen, I will give you the opportunity to go first, is where you also give us your concluding remarks. But importantly is that you also give us how the year has gone for you, what you thank God for into the year.
Apart from being alive.
Yeah, but also the prospects for
the only I think could be being alive.
Yes, that also for being alive.
COVID.
Yes, there are so many things to be thankful for. I'm looking good. Yes. I
mean, the biting economy.
Yeah, I married off a daughter.
Wow.
I got a brand new grandson.
Wow.
You know, so things are moving.
It was a good year.
It was a good year. But again, looking forward, you know, for me, I think going back to what Sarah was saying and Dr. You know, the issue of change, it can't be business as usual. If we continue the way we are things are really, really
We are in
tough.
trouble.
We are in trouble. And you know, sometimes even if you are, I sympathize with doctor, giving and giving. Some people don't give, but internally you don't feel good, you know. You can't feel good when your neighbor is not feeling good. And most of us, all of us we know here, you know, there are people who depend on us, on school fees, health, you know, somebody has died, all these meetings and, you know, things are really, really tough.
Every day, group. You could be contributing like 2 sets of condolences.
Exactly. The one who are sick, the one who are doing this. So it isn't, even if we are a bit okay, but the burden is really big. And the future really, and sometimes you look at, it used to be in Kenya where they used to do harambe for school fees, but it has started here, which is also good, because for me, I would rather collect money for somebody to go to school than somebody to do a wedding, you know, these flamboyant weddings. But that shows that things are really, really tight. So going forward, as a country, as an economy, it shouldn't be business as usual. But I don't know whether whether we can do the impossible, look at things differently, take on the issues, radical issues Sarah is talking about. We just pray. But for me, I'm usually hopeful, you know. There are things which we can build on to. We have the weather, you know, we have the soils. You can grow your food. God has just given us
forget about governance.
grasshoppers, you know, free from heaven.
So
Grasshoppers.
we forget the governance issues.
No. I'm not saying we forget about the governance. I'm saying there are those things which we can, opportunities which we can be able to build on. But what's important as a government needs to plan, you know, needs thorough planning. And we need to cut our expenditures. We need to prioritize. I don't know whether it can be done, but I'm hopeful if it's done, Uganda would be we would be the happiest country, really.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jane. Thank you.
Pray.
I think from a personal point of view, my year went well because finally, after 10 years, I defended my PhD. I kept in the PhD. My daughter said, "This PhD." So I had PhD babies, 4 or 5 of them during my PhD. So I just lived my life and made it normal. I kept telling my supervisor that at that time you saw me on TV, I was doing practicals of health policy, and which was my PhD. So I'm glad I had all this support to do the PhD and learn actually in the field. Because when I wrote my notes, my book finally, after all this experience with engaging in the policy thing, then it brought life to the write-up. Yeah, because in the middle I sort of took a break and said, let me try these theories. But the more important thing, I think, which went well for me is that for the first time, government started processes to compensate healthcare professionals who die in the line of duty. I hope they do the same for policemen. I hope they do the same for soldiers. Why is this important? We have seen businessmen being compensated when the war broke out in South Sudan. When they come and take your land to make a road, they compensate you heavily, by the way. But when it came to life, for some reason, people who work for government at the front line, be it soldiers and so on, it has never come out that they have been compensated. Actually, the SOPs had to be revived. People say, we have never done this. So that was a plus for me. Of course, another plus is the CT scans, you know, and then the salaries. Yeah, the CT scans. Road traffic accidents are increasingly becoming a problem. And we need CT scans. You remember there was a gentleman, may soul rest in peace, called Agaba. He was working, he was an engineer, I think a planner with KCCA. He got an accident in Western Uganda, which is really the ruling class. But when he reached Mbarara, the CT scan either wasn't there or it wasn't working. So that brings it to another question of whether we are going to make those CT scans work. Okay, then accessible to those who need them.
Do we have money?
Then finally,
do we have power?
The regional referral
is shedding us every
day. It's as if they're telling us bring back the concession.
In the darkness.
So we need we need the specialists, radiologists to handle that. Now, moving forward next year, what do I see? I pray for peace. Why am I praying for peace? There's I would say, uncoordinated movement of troops, in my view. I'm not a political scientist, but my common sense tells me the things may not be in order in the corridors of power. And we pray for a peaceful transition. Whether it takes us 6 years to 2031, or 8 or whatever, or immediately, or even through a revolution if it happens, but peaceful, because we can lose even the opportunity to have the 3 trillion, which everything can be lost and we go back to square one. So these things are relative. These things are relative. We may say, you know, we want the first class democracy where everything is in order and, you know, there are no economic hitmen and so on. But the reality is we have to exist in our reality. But we pray for those people who are in charge of decision making about our lives to have consideration so that Uganda is stronger in 2023.
Doctor, are you also planning to run again?
Yes, I will run again, most likely for workers, but using a theoretical approach. I'm not going to use this money because we want to sell a message.
But money failed. You didn't give and it failed.
Yes, but I would like to use the Lincoln approach.
What was that
The
approach?
pitched running until one day, maybe by mistake, you find yourself in the house. But sell a message. Sell a message of the worker should be at the forefront of economic revolution. You know, when these Chinese investors come, how do we treat our workers? Where do we place them in this idea of transforming Uganda? Where is the worker? Are they empowered? Where are the youth? Are they given work?
How many years do it take to educate a doctor? 6 or 5?
Well, you can say 6 immediately into doctorship, but you know there are others before. There are many years before that. So when they are doing economic costing, they add even those 13 or so years in secondary school.
Yeah, okay.
But by the way, we now have an explosion of doctors. Actually, we are having unemployment and underemployment. When I was the president, we passed a resolution to start a company to export doctors. But the person who was supposed to help us with that was very close to the president, so we found it difficult. And now he's deployed in State House. But we hope that
find another.
Yeah, we need to
because China, the Chuchuba does a lot of
medical
tourism.
They do.
Now,
medical export of labor.
Yes, and now United Arab Emirates have built first-class health infrastructure.
And they
need doctors.
They need doctors. So getting jobs for doctors is also an important consideration.
That's a good news. Now the issue is payments.
No, the reason I was asking there was actually I was looking at the consciousness of our people. Somebody spends 13 years, 7 years primary, 6 years high school.
That's 13.
Those are 13 plus 6 years. Those
19.
are 19.
And typically now,
a
another 3
doctor
to be a specialist.
19 years,
21.
minimum,
Yes.
19 years in school. But the consciousness does not produce, for some, I'm not going to generalize, it will be very unfair, an active citizenry who knows their rights and what they are entitled for their labor. I'm bringing this in line with the kneading. We all wanted, yes, we all wanted equitable pay for doctors. We want equitable pay for lawyers who work under DPP. We want equitable pay for policemen. We want equitable pay for all Ugandans, men and women. And it's a right of citizens to get that pay.
Sure.
So for me, one of the depressing acts of this year was getting that white coat that we admire so much, which means life
for the butcher.
Which means life to us for the doctors. Which means life to us. For us ordinary people. When I see a doctor walking in with a gown, I know that my pain will ease. I know that I will have another day to live. Then you take it down, all that dignity, to the soil, because you got a salary.
Which is your right.
It was part of, the depressing.
But Sarah, if I may jump in there.
No.
In defense of my president.
No. You will come in. The moderator will give you time.
Okay.
Because I will, you
forget
disrupt my
the flow. Downloading the hard disk, yes.
So for me, I think citizenship goes with doing away, active citizenry goes with doing away with such miserable and degrading acts. I know that in Buganda Kingdom, yes, kneeling is very dignified.
Yeah, but we don't kneel for
culture,
your...
Wait. I'm coming because some people were hiding behind the culture. Even in my culture where we are non-Baganda, we kneel for elders. We
Yeah.
kneel to greet people who are seated. We don't greet them standing.
Exactly.
We kneel to thank. Even in churches, we kneel.
Mm.
So, but when you vulgarize these cultural practices that even Baganda kneel, why do you kneel for your citizens' rights? Why do you kneel for something you've spent 19 years in school for? Why? Why did your parents send you to school? To kneel? Put the, the dignified white coat in soil for something you are entitled to? No. The other depressing act for the citizens.
And it created uproar worldwide, by the way.
It
Worldwide.
was a big disappointment. So the other depressing act is the continuing kidnaps, torture, degradation
That's
of
what I call the
citizenship.
uncoordinated movement.
Degradation of citizenship. Any sensible government would make it their cardinal duty to protect citizens with their property. But when you have a government conducting itself in a manner like Boko Haram, just because you are political and popular, and you want to degrade these young people who know you are not taking them anywhere and they want change of power, by kidnapping, by extrajudicial killings, by torture, you do not deserve to be in power. We need to recorrect ourselves as a country and end these killings in 2022 so that they don't cross over. The torture, the kidnaps, the killings, the numberless drones, all of those criminals should stop their acts and not cross over to 2023. On a bit of a positive note, I wish really to commend the resilience of citizens to survive COVID, to survive torture, the pregnant girls who were defiled, who have gone back to school. That resilience to keep pushing. The resilience of traders, the resilience of people in Owino and other markets. Let's keep pushing. As I conclude, there is only one definition, common definition of democracy. Government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Spend resources on the people, not yourselves.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was a very powerful way to end this conversation on this festive season. And in this festive season, and of course to thank you, Jane, for sparing your time. Dr. Ekwaro, you brought.
I didn't respond to the Nilgate. You'll have to call me back.
Yes, we'll have to.
Call me back.
But thank you for bringing a very interesting perspective into the economy, the medical perspective. It has blended so well into this discussion and made it more lively. Thank you, Sarah, for always being here with us through the year, and of course the back room, the back people, the people behind the cameras, the production team. Thank you very much for bringing these conversations live to the people, and also for our viewers out there for being ardent followers for this conversation. Into this year, we had a very spike into our viewership through our neighborhood, the neighbors, through the election time into Kenya. We had a very interesting spike into the viewership from the region, and thank you very much, viewers out there and across the globe. We see the analytics that show positivity that these conversations are going across the globe. Thank you very much for being ardent followers. For me and the crew here, we want to wish you Merry Christmas and a very fruitful 2023. Thank you.